There are about 1.1 million Indians living in Kuwait. They really want a low-cost option to travel back to their home country. There is a urgent need to raise this limit from 12,000 to what is a more appropriate figure today.
And Jazeera is expanding their wings in India.
Thank you for having me. We've been operating into India now for about 15 years. Especially over the last 5 years, we have expanded our operation into India. Jazeera is a low-cost airline based out of Kuwait, and today we fly to 8 cities in India, about 30 frequency a week. We've been operating right through the last 5 years, including during the pandemic. We have been serving the Indian population based in Kuwait, even during the Vande Bharat program. Today there are about 1.1 million Indians living in Kuwait, most of them in middle and low income jobs, and so they really want a low cost option to travel back to their home country. And along with our Indian friends and low cost carriers operating into Kuwait, we are very proud to serve this segment. We fly to a combination of the larger cities and the smaller cities. So the big cities like Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai, but also the smaller cities like Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Trivandrum are part of our network.
So how we can see that Jazeera is going to expand their wings in India in coming days?
So at the moment, as you know, traffic between countries abroad and India are governed by air services agreements. The agreement between the state of Kuwait and India is for 12,000 seats per week for carriers of both countries. This is currently fully utilized by both Indian carriers flying to Kuwait and Kuwaiti carriers like us flying into India. So this 12,000 seats per week limit is part of a very old agreement between India and Kuwait signed in 2007. At that time, there were only about 3 lakh Indians living in Kuwait. Today there are about 11 lakh Indians living in Kuwait, which means that there is a urgent need to raise this limit from 12,000 to what is a more appropriate figure today, which will allow Indian carriers to operate more into Kuwait and vice versa. The moment we have a new agreement in place, which the two governments are currently in conversation, we would love to expand primarily to the smaller cities, because for workers in Kuwait to fly back to their hometown, they prefer to fly directly to their hometown and not via the busy international gateways.
So when Indian aviation is growing in terms of ordering the aircraft, expanding their wings of Indian carriers, how can you expect that market will be suitable for you? I mean to say, recently Air India has placed a mega order. Indigo is expanding their wings internationally. Akasa is here, and other low-cost carrier is there. So, is it suitable for you to grab the market and seat capacity in coming days?
Let's remember that India is actually as large as a continent, with almost 1.5 billion people. All the airlines that you have mentioned and all the aircraft orders that you mentioned are entirely necessary and appropriate for the new India and the aspirations of people for what they want to travel abroad compared to earlier years. Even today, for example, I see on our flights young honeymooners, ladies with very colorful bangles traveling to places like Baku, Tbilisi, some of the resort cities in Turkey like Antalya for their honeymoon. This would have been unthinkable a few years ago, and today you find that young people, even though they don't have a big travel budget, they aspire and they have ambition to take a honeymoon to some of these places. This is going to require not only Indian carriers to grow, which we welcome. This also requires appropriate airlines for different segments, in our case low-cost airlines, to expand into India. This will give people the opportunity to travel a lot more than they could in the past.